Welcome. Our presentation title is The Reality of Managing Microservice Deployments at Scale. You Need a Spinnaker. So we'll start with introductions. My name is Richard Francois. I've been in IT for roughly 25 years or 25 plus years. I've held developer roles, solution architecture roles, and moved into the cloud as a cloud architect. And for the last couple years, been very focused on toolchain automation and the technical lead for Spinnaker.
And I'm a product manager at Pivotal. I've been working with the Spinnaker community for the past year and a half.
So we have a couple disclaimers, and you'll be happy to hear that I'm going to read it verbatim. So number one, any third-party trademarks are the intellectual property of their respective owners, and any mention herein is for referential purposes only. And the second one I really like is opinions expressed here are solely our own and do not express the views or opinions of JPMorgan Chase. So what's great about that, I can say almost anything I want, but I'll keep it up and up in terms of professional context. But it is my opinions, and Olga and our opinions we're definitely excited to share with you today. So what will we cover? I'm going to take you through, just set the stage in terms of business context. I'll give you an introduction of our first generation toolchain. Then there were a few things we learned in that process, and we'll talk about key components about what we learned. We'll then do an intro of the product Spinnaker. We'll come back and show how we've integrated Spinnaker into the toolchain. We'll do a demo for you, and then we'll talk about unleashing the power of not only Spinnaker, but the entire software delivery process. Let me ask, how many first use Spinnaker, or Jenkins? Jenkins, let me start with Jenkins. How many Jenkins? Okay. The next question, how about Spinnaker? Okay. Both? All right, cool. All right, so business context. Significant scale. We have over 53,000 technologists. And of that, there's 30,000 developers. So it's very important that we're very efficient in the tools and technologies and practices that we embed within our technology organization. The reason that's so important, obviously, is we're serving this breadth of business, right? The more effective our technologists are, the more effective our business is in terms of being able to deliver new business capabilities. And ultimately, it's about serving that end state customer. The feedback loop is also critical. So the business gains confidence and trust in technologists when we can deliver. So the business feels very comfortable coming back to us as technologists and requesting features, right? Because they have confidence that we can deliver. And that feedback loop is critical. Plus it develops the right culture. If you think about the fact that developers now are able to achieve the type of velocity that our business needs, the business feels very comfortable, again, coming back to the technology, but they start speaking a different language as well, right? They don't drop a bucket of requirements. They feel very comfortable, make the button red. We make the button red, they're happy, right? So very important that we're able to enable efficiency in our technology teams, build that trust, get that speed, and able to address the breadth of our business. So what's our technology approach? Coming back to these major themes, developer efficiency, number one, which allows our business to deliver new capabilities. Again, back to the very important point that we're able to deliver first class to our end customer. There's 4 components to this strategy. We're going to focus today primarily on practice and tools. Platform and frameworks. Platform is about the private and public cloud platforms that we enable for developers. So how quickly can we turn up services on these platforms, and how can we turn up features and functions and capability? Very important not only to deliver private cloud, AWS, Google, Microsoft, we got to turn up services and make those available. Frameworks is all about enabling our developers Spring Boot. We have a brand called Moneta internally. It's about making Spring Boot easier to use, and there's a number of other items that fall in frameworks as well. This presentation again is going to focus on practice and tools. There's a great keynote coming up on Thursday that's going to take you through these 4 components and talk about the value and what we do more detailed around these 4 components. And so what has this technology approach allowed us to achieve to date? We're doing 6,000 deployments a day, up to 10,000 deployments a day to the Pivotal platform. We have 90 foundations, so there's 30 foundations, dev, test, and prod, distributed globally. We're hitting 6,000 deployments a day, up to 10,000. And now I want to take you into the tool chain and the process that allows us to achieve that. So this is build release circa 2017-18. We've invested in a brand called Jules. It is CI/CD based on Jenkins. We have this other brand called AIM, which is our deployment and release automation product. And then Gaia is our brand for private cloud. Very simply, the flow here is Jenkins does what you would expect it to do, builds the artifact, ensure the artifact's safe, and then also hands the artifact over to a repo. It also tests the artifact, by the way. Hands it over to AIM, sits in a repo, and then what AIM does, it manages the deployment to the endpoint. AIM, we have over 7 years of development in this product. It's agent-based technology, so an agent sits on both virtual, physical servers, desktops, 15, 20,000 deployments a day. We extended it to fit cloud platforms, and the way that we did that is agent-based technology is not great for cloud. So what we did is we basically had AIM call some intelligence services that understood how to deploy to the cloud platform. Very simply here, it's calling a CF push to be able to deploy that application to the foundation. Also for AWS, we did extend AIM to support AWS with very simply the same piece. The last CLI command in AIM is deploy package, but after that it was very different from the experience to be able to deploy to Gaia. So up to 10,000 deployments a day with this process. We hit our 2 million mark last week. And I was going to tell a joke around McDonald's, but I figured they said don't do it. I might age myself. You guys remember when, 15, 100 million burgers sold? Some of you would get it, but I'm not going there. I was told not to do it. So, all right. So what did we learn in this process? We knew we could do better, but it's a process, right? We had these big investments in Jules and AIM, and we've got these new cloud platforms. What can we do better? And one thing we wanted to do, back to the developer outcome, we want our developers to be efficient. We need that developer experience to be first class and consistent, regardless of where we're deploying, whether it's private or public cloud. We want the experience to be consistent. And I touched on a little bit, AWS is different to deploying to Gaia. We want deployments to be safer. We codified the full piece, whether it's AIM and all that intelligence that does deployment to the cloud, we were coding all of that. We wanted that to be first-class constructs. Whatever engine we chose, we wanted that code to be dealt with in a first-class way. And then the deployment strategies themselves, right? If you're doing some advanced deployment strategies, we could codify those, but we'd rather the product do that. And then so we get to a level of quality, but quality is not enough. We need quality at scale. So we needed an engine that would handle we're projecting up to 25,000 deployments, by the end of next year. So this engine needs to provide quality and quality at scale. So it needs to be available, resilient. You can't be down, right, when you're deploying applications, very simply. So at this point, I will turn over to Olga, who will take you through an introduction of the Spinnaker product.
Thank you, Richard. Do you know? And all of these cloud providers contributing integrations to it. It's scalable. Netflix deploys 4,000 deployments a day with it. It's battle tested. The community is vibrant. Lots of people from small startups to large enterprises are able to leverage it. And a single instance of Spinnaker can work with all of these cloud providers simultaneously. Spinnaker embeds continuous delivery expertise. It originated at Netflix when they were moving towards microservices, breaking down their monolith, moving to AWS. And they discovered pretty quickly that opening up AWS console to application developers is not the right level of abstraction for people to provision an infrastructure for themselves. they would make mistakes, and everything was inconsistent. So they built a dashboard on it, and then eventually took this dashboard and lessons learned and added pipelines and created a purposefully built continuous delivery solution, Spinnaker. Then Spinnaker was open sourced, community grew, some cutting edge features, canary analysis was contributed, and last year, Pivotal started to contribute to Spinnaker. We contributed Cloud Foundry integrations, better integration with artifact stores, Artifactory and Netflix, and started building enterprise security, integrating Spring Cloud Config Service to manage credentials more securely. And we look forward to making more contributions. And finally, this year, Spinnaker was contributed to the Continuous Delivery Foundation to formalize the governance. And the emphasis is in Spinnaker is on building guardrails, not gates, helping application developers self-provision and self-serve. So Spinnaker presents an application-centric control plane. It has two main benefits, inventory and pipelines. And inventory is built by querying different cloud environments, pulling from the environments and creating and resource view that are applicable to application developers. So all of the applications that you have across different environments show up on the same screen and lets you drill down and see more details about different individual application versions in specific environment, as well as show you the health of the applications. And it integrates with monitoring systems, and it allows you to turn monitoring into action. So for example, if your application is experiencing problems, need to keep away from that. It's experiencing problems, and you get an alert. You can go into your monitoring system and drill down and see which specific instances are impacted. And then you can quickly jump back into Spinnaker, find those instances, and do some corrective actions. For example, you can roll back the applications, you can scale it, you can terminate instances that are failing so that the cloud provider can restart them. You can take them out of load balancer so you can troubleshoot them further without impacting production traffic. Or you can encapsulate all of these actions into a pipelines that you pre-configure, and you can run them with additional checks. And pipelines help you orchestrate your software release process with safety, compliance, and security. Pipelines consist of stages, primarily of two main kinds. Pipelines for stages for infrastructure management, things like deploy that are consistent across different cloud providers, with things like blue-green deployment available as a checkbox. All of the other corrective actions I just mentioned. Clone server group, or that helps you promote artifact across environments, so that to make sure that you deploy exactly the same artifact across environments, from dev stage into prod. Deploy manifest in Kubernetes that allows you to deploy any manifest that Kubernetes understands into the environment. So very flexible. And other pipeline stages help you create guardrails. These are things like manual judgments, check preconditions, run jobs so that you can execute integration tests alongside your applications, and canary analysis to make sure that you don't promote versions of your applications into production that degrade the service to the end user. And finally, Spinnaker is a purposefully built continuous delivery solution. It has a lot of best practices of continuous delivery built in and available just out of the box. Just some of them, blue-green deployments, which is zero downtime and available as a checkbox. Rollbacks that are also zero downtime, and you can specify which version of your application you want to roll back to, not just the previous one. And automated canary analysis is the latest cutting-edge feature of Spinnaker, where the Netflix and community expertise really shines. Years of experience went into doing canaries manually, trying to automate it a number of times, and finally releasing this. So two key insights from Netflix here. One is you don't want to evaluate canary against fixed thresholds. you want to evaluate it against production versions under the same production conditions in case your traffic varies. And you want to do it differentially over time and capture that. And 2 is that it's not accurate to evaluate canary against a production environment that's been running for a while. Because the applications, when they run for a while, they populate caches, create different memory footprints. So it's not, the application deployed from scratch does not have it, and it will skew analysis. As you can see at the top here, it's a pretty complex setup. And Spinnaker has stages that allows you to both provision the infrastructure as well as set up canary analysis like very easily. You can clone production environment and deploy a baseline. You can deploy canary from scratch, attach them all to the load balancer, and then the canary analysis stage allows you to specify which metrics you want to collect and how you want to evaluate them. So with this, I gave you a glimpse at what Spinnaker can do, and I'm going to pass it back to Richard to continue his story.
Okay, thank you, Olga. So wonderful introduction of Spinnaker, very powerful product. Everyone loves Spinnaker. Wave hands. Okay, all right, thank you. Awesome. All right, so if I take you back to the 3 components that we identified as key to our success: developer experience and consistency with the deployment mechanisms. The second piece was first-class constructs, treat these deployments as first class. We had codified quite a bit. And then the quality of deployments at scale. We feel we have a chance with Spinnaker. We feel we're on the right horse, but it was cloud native from the beginning. But if we get into the plumbing, and those have been in the plumbing, it still has some maturity to do. Now, we've tested it up to 500 concurrent deployments. We can do some more. But we're satisfied with what we see in terms of its utilization. I think we're sitting on 24 allocations. It's not cores. It might have been 6.4 cores and about 256 gig of memory to do roughly 500 concurrent deployments to the Gaia application platform. So fairly efficient in terms of how much juice it uses. So that means costs, or we're not having to use a lot of compute to handle a very high volume of deployments. And also the fact that, so I talked about it's critical that it's resilient. It has shown that it can stand up to this load, but we'll continue to pound it and make sure it's ready. We can't switch these capabilities on unless this product is, and I'll talk a little bit about the rollout. So multi-cloud support, Google plums Spinnaker with capability for Kubernetes and also their platform. We've got Pivotal contributing for Kubernetes deployments as well and their PaaS platform. We have AWS, Netflix doing great for AWS. You've got Microsoft plumbing Spinnaker for their platform. So we have these cloud vendors that are investing in this platform, and it gets back to the point that helps to be first class in terms of deployment. We're not codifying, it's the platform owners that are codifying these capabilities. And then to emphasize zero code, zero downtime deployment strategies. So whether you're blue-green, whether you're Highlander deployment, and the consistency that whether you're deploying to any of these cloud platforms, one of the stages, deploy, and those that have experience with the product, it's deploy Kubernetes, deploy to Gaia, deploy to AWS. It's selectable deployment strategies, right? Zero code, completely configurable. Application-centric visibility. So we've got 90 pools and 90 consoles, right? So not the developers deployed all those consoles, but you have to jump into different consoles to see your application. Say maybe AWS, you jump out and you see more of an infrastructure view. We have applications right now that are deployed on private cloud and public cloud. The nice thing with Spinnaker is you're able to get one centric view of your component running on-prem, off-prem, see the application, see the application's health, and see configuration information about that application. So very powerful to be able to give those views to our application owners and developers. The last point is value of open source, right? The innovations for the last, 3 to 5 years, more so in my career, I've seen just whether it's AI and machine learning and the cloud platforms and tool chain, it just seems like we're seeing the pace of innovation around technology is faster than, and maybe I'm just getting slower, but it just seems like, right, things are heading, and growing in terms of speed of innovation. Think about the way we package our applications, right? So we went heavy virtualization, 80% we got there, we're deploying on virtual servers. Now we're moving into containerized workloads. And then there's Kubernetes, and there's the service mesh, and then we have functions. So our applications are starting to change in terms of the way they package themselves. Well, we feel with this open source engine and the fact that we just talked about the vendors of these platforms are investing in building up Spinnaker, we have a chance to keep up with the pace of innovation with this product, which is a key value point. So why did we choose Spinnaker? That's some of the reasons that we chose this product. All right, so how did we integrate it more importantly? Integration is a process, and you'll get to see an excellent demo here in a moment. I'm over-promising and maybe under-deliver, but I'll take you through a demo. So again, we've got Jules as the CI orchestrator in this case. If you recall back, we called it the CI and CD orchestrator. So now it's based on OS Jenkins. We've got AIM as part of our solution, and we talked about AIM calls these intelligent layers to be able to handle deployment. Now AIM is calling Spinnaker, and Spinnaker has the capability to deploy to these multi-cloud platforms. Jules and AIM provide a lot in heavily regulatory companies like ourselves, right? We built, and the regulators, when they come in, we say we're using Jules and we're using AIM. They're comfortable with that, right? And so the way that we've integrated Spinnaker, it's important that we're able to maintain some of that control and some of that trust in how we deliver applications to the platform. What we've achieved beyond what we showed earlier is now we're able to, with a single pass pipeline, we're able to deploy the application, deploy services, bind application to services in a single pipeline. There's a greater experience. You may not recall, but all we had done before with the 6,000 to 10,000 deployments a day is deploy the application. So now in a single pass pipeline, we're able to deploy services and the application. And then also do blue-green, do Highlander, and some of these other deployment strategies. Okay, let me take you into how this actually works and how a developer works with these technologies. What you're going to see is developers don't have to be they don't have to understand the product of Jenkins or AIM or Spinnaker. So I'm going to show you that it's a parameterized view that developers get. Now there's documentation that helps developers understand how to parameterize the flows, but they don't have to be experts in the tools. Now I would start here, and it takes about 33 minutes to make a change and get it all the way through deployment. So I'll just show you a previous run. Everybody okay with that? All right, I see some shaking heads. Some people said nope. That's all right. Somebody's got my back. He's in the front row. All right, so familiar with the manifest, the application manifest, right? Very simply, binding to what we've, the Spring Object Store, and we'll show the actual Jules YAML that may be more exciting here. Recall this seal ID in our organization. Every application gets a unique ID, and I'll bring you back to that in a moment. AIM, the product AIM, there's a few configuration items that are defined for AIM. And then for the end platform, Gaia, the developer specifies the manifest from their repo and also the Spinnaker parameter file, which I'll show you. Here's the org, PCTN, so foundations work off of org and space. If we're coming off the master branch, the developer can specify what space they want to deploy to, and they can name one and or more pools that they'd like to deploy to in the same feature branch, specify your dev space, and also what pools you want to deploy to. I'll take you to the parameters file for Spinnaker. A very simple one here. We actually support up to 127 parameters, and I'll show how that comes to life. A developer specifies deployment strategy, Highlander, blue-green. Do I want to create services? True. I'd like to create an object store, and I'd like to create a MySQL database. Now let me take you over to that application for those that remember, the 104017. It's important to note here, we haven't unleashed the UI, so developers don't see the UI yet. What we do through this flow is we onboard that application through the flow. We create the application, and we create this pipeline that I'll show you in just a moment. So there's over 55 stages in the pipeline and over 127 parameters. You want to see the spider web? Yeah. And no one's clapping, but it's beautiful. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, I felt pretty good about that. But all right, so it's a pattern build is what I'm trying to get to, and parameters drive. And developers, again, they don't need to know about Spinnaker. They're getting the application deployed, their services created all through a single pipeline. This ran about 2 hours ago, so we have our deploy service 1, deploy service 2. We could go into the details, which was an object store, and then the MySQL database, if you remember. We deploy the app. Also, the pipeline allows for you to tear down everything that you've just deployed. So you can actually, there's other parameters that say not actually destroy everything before I get started, create my application fresh in my services, and then destroy it all, right? Those are just switches or parameters that we enable for the developers. If we look at the deploy stage, and I need to see where we deployed this, what pool and what region. So this is NA3A, so we'll come back over to the infrastructure view. Let me filter on that pool. And so here's the instance that we deployed. And then let me take you down and see if somebody sees the mistake that I made when I deployed it. These are the bound services. Do you recall there was 2 services that we bound to? And if I take you back to, just raise your hand if you see the mistake. How many services did we bind to here? 1, and we actually deployed 2. Somebody got it. All right, so that's not so exciting. Let's go to the load balancer view. So there is a couple infrastructure views in the tool. So it's not only your applications. If you see here, we've got a number of different application types. Let me take off this filter. So we have applications that are deployed across various pools and different types of app. As I scroll down, you may see a static application. There's maybe a Node.js app as well. Back to the load balancer. I'll take you into the load balancer that was created as part of this deployment. And then you're going to be excited about this app that I built for you. Just hold on. Why are you laughing? I worked hard on this app, right? All right, you're going to see it. There you go. Wow, hey. All right, awesome. All right, so we'll come back. That's all I wanted to share with you in terms of the presentation, right? Or in terms of the demo, just show you it's parameter driven. Again, developers don't need to understand the mechanics of these products. Now, we do want to unleash the power of Spinnaker, and I'll get into that in just a moment. There was the demo, unleashing the power. So what are we doing? The commitment to open source software is critical. We're using Jenkins, we're using Spinnaker. But one thing we can do in such a large organization is we have 30,000 developers, and we have a lot of developers on our toolchain team as well. Developers like to develop, right? So we can do things that we maybe shouldn't do. So we want to leverage Jenkins and Spinnaker in their native form and not wrap around a lot of proprietary pieces that we can build because we get creative as technologists. So we got to be very thoughtful in our integration of these products. The next 2 points, I'll race through these points. It's around bringing the developers with us, right? Education, we have these tech primers. There's probably hundreds of tech primers that teach developers how to leverage our frameworks and our platforms and our tool chain, and they can go through the entire tech primer and learn how to do these things in a very efficient way. Cloud Party, I'll touch on that. We've had 2 of them. We'll bring applications and all the technologists to the same location. And so we'll have about 50 apps there. We'll actually take that application, move them from dev to test into production. So of the 50 apps in a week's time, so we have our network team there, we have our toolchain team there, we have our cyber team there, we have those that are actually listening to the last assessment to say, is your app truly compliant? We have like a 200 checklist, those people are there. So we're able to accelerate an application all the way into production in a week's time. And we're talking real production, serving clients. So these cloud parties have been really effective. The last piece is the guardrails. We want to unleash the power of these products, but we're in this regulatory state that we will live in, right? Because we are a bank and we have to do it the right way. But we do want to take off the gates that we've built on this product, right? The parameter-driven flow works very nicely, but it works for about, I'll guesstimate 75%. There's 25% that need the real power of these tools and to construct their own pipelines and do the right thing. Where we're headed, and I'll show you a bit about where we're at as I walk through this, and we'll show you some new flows that we've been able to integrate. We need to deconstruct these pipelines. So Jenkins does things very well, builds the artifact, tests the artifact, and puts the artifact into a repo. CD, listening on that repo is a bit better practice. We're stitching and we're calling APIs in Spinnaker, create the app, create the pipeline, invoke the pipeline. A more natural occurrence would be build the artifact, put your image in a repo, Spinnaker listens and is triggered off the repo. That's a little bit better practice. To do that though, and then to unleash the API and the UI, we need better RBAC control within the tool, and then we need policies wrapped around the pipelines. So if developers or DevOps teams develop these pipelines, we have to ensure that particular stages never exit that pipeline. Right? So whether it's a manual approval, whether it's to check a change control system, I like when I see heads shake. It's beautiful. Makes me think I'm saying something that makes sense, right? So I appreciate that. All right, so then the last point here is continue to leverage partners. We don't have all the answers, and we have some great partners that have helped us achieve what we've been able to achieve to date. Our developers are really good at telling us what we do wrong, and so we call those friction points. That's a lot better than hearing what's wrong. But we actually have and manage very seriously the list of these friction points. And then developers vote which one, so they get out there and vote and something percolates to the top. Well, we don't always have the right answers, so we can leverage our partners and bring some of those friction points back to our partners who say, hey, here's a better way to implement it, because we may be doing something proprietary and we want to be able to avoid that. Okay, so what does it look like now? This may be a prettier picture because it's aimless, right? Right? No one knows what AIM is. AIM is a great engine, but it's just not fit for cloud, right? So we've been able to remove that from the path of deployment. And these products are what we want to be able to cater to developers that don't belong to our organization. And when they join, we love them to be able to come in and leverage standard technology. It's Bitbucket, it's Jenkins. That repo, the AIM repo, is no longer AIM, it's JFrog, right? A common repo. And Spinnaker. The piece that we've still done with this flow is it's still heavily stitched together. Jenkins still says create application, create that pattern pipeline, invokes the pipeline to deploy to Kubernetes. The pattern pipeline for Kubernetes obviously is much different than that 127 parameterized Gaia pipeline. But you can imagine Kubernetes is actually very flexible in what you can do to deploy to it. So it's very difficult to build a pattern pipeline. So we really need to open up the UI and allow development teams and DevOps teams to build these pipelines. Next, we talk about consistency. Now we have the same tools and the same process to deploy to multi-cloud. That was the strategy that we've started with when we started looking at what we need to do. Now we support AWS and Google and Microsoft Azure and the Pivotal platform and Kubernetes, but it's a consistent capability. So, it's very important that we didn't take our developers through all these maturations of different ways to be able to deploy. We feel we have the consistency we need so you can solve problems and you can also provide better solutions when you standardize and do things in a very common way. All right, in closing, I love this. Engineers should be at the heart of the transformation. It always wasn't that way. We're starting to speak that way and really understand developers. And it's taken me some time to get to that point. Why, I don't know, but somehow our culture has allowed us to say, no, developers are king. I was a deep developer for like 15 years, right? And then I kind of lost my way a little bit, maybe when I became an architect. Developers are critical. You have to put them at the heart of your transformation. Don't get stuck in years of investment. That's very hard to do when you have the investments that we have in these unbelievable, intelligent people that run Jules and run AIM. It was the AIM product owner that actually came to us and said, where the tool changed AIM said, it's not a fit. So part of that is not easy. Those conversations and for teams to let go of some of that technology, it takes the right communications and it takes the proper culture and it takes a focus on the engineer, right? We believe Spinnaker is a game changer. So dropping AIM out, bringing in Spinnaker, leveraging Jenkins for what it does well and leveraging Spinnaker for what it does well, start to decouple these engines and do it the right way. Open the API to Spinnaker, open the UI to Spinnaker will enable us to do much more. bringing the organization along for the ride, talked about the cloud parties. So that concludes the presentation that we have for you today, except we do have, I'm sorry, Olga, we do have this piece. Very important.
Yes. We would like to announce beta for Pivotal Continuous Delivery with Spinnaker. Like I mentioned, we implemented a very rich Cloud Foundry integration. Kubernetes is available. We are looking forward to building more enterprise features into Spinnaker. So if it's a restricted beta, please check the website and reach out to us if you are interested in participating.
And we have testing. We have one more slide, and this just talks about what else is happening here at the conference. The keynote will take you through platform, frameworks, tools, and practices. And it's an exciting keynote that I would like you to see on Thursday, I believe it is. The other two pieces are just more about Spinnaker. I think the canary analysis one coming up on Tuesday at 2 p.m. I definitely want to be there to see that. And then this next one, highly available, resilient multi-site deployments using Spinnaker, Wednesday at 11:30. So attend those if you want to know more about Spinnaker. And with that, we will open up to Q&A. Oh, thank you.
Do you evaluate to use Concourse for your CI?
Okay, good question. Do we use Concourse for CI? We do use Jenkins, but we use Concourse for the platform, right? So not for developers to use, but we do use Concourse within the bank to manage the actual platform, Pivotal platform, but not for applications, business applications.
There's a reason why you chose Jenkins, just because you have the experience of it, or?
Well, I think Jenkins started first, to be quite honest, right? I think Concourse is very powerful, but Jenkins got its start and the Jules ecosystem developed before we actually became a cloud platform team and adopted Concourse. So if Concourse would have been more prominent, that may have been the tool of choice. It just happens to be Jenkins was first, and Jenkins does what we need it to do. But Concourse is a really great CI tool. Yes, sir?
You mentioned that you have logged the UI, so how are you managing the promotion to environments and deployments, like the user?
Okay, so they don't use the UI, that's correct, right? So the promotion is, if you remember the parameters, if this is the question you're asking, how do we manage the promotion from dev to QA to prod? It wasn't really clear, may not have made it really clear, but master branch, do you recall where I pointed out that you want to go to a dev space? So the master branch typically is going to go to a prod space. Your feature branches may go down to other spaces. That's part of that answer, but it's exactly right. It's too rigid, right? You have to get in and make that change. You can come out of master branch into dev, come out of master branch into QA, come out of master branch into prod. It's not the best implementation, right? I do think that that's a perfect example and use case where, we don't have the model exactly right. I'm sorry, I'll come back to you.
How hard is it to manage Spinnaker? We have a much smaller team, but I don't know how big the team is. So.
You want to take that one? It's hard. Yeah, I can't lie, it's hard. Yeah. It's a complex piece of, anytime we get in these microservice architectures, right, in cloud native, it runs on Kubernetes, it's complex. I think there's some good work happening in this operator, this new way to install and manage Spinnaker, but it's a really complex, the plumbing of Spinnaker is hard to maintain and be able to patch, and those type of pieces it's important, but obviously very complex.
Yes.
We do have a team, and we have some expertise, and we cross-train a number of people to be able to support this engine.
Right, so we will be offering Spinnaker as a Helm chart running on top of PKS, and sort of that's the recommended deployment approach. And the community over the years spent a lot of effort, and Google primarily, instituting the release process for Spinnaker, as well as patching and versioning of microservices that work well together. So that's kind of work in progress still, but we are working on it together.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yeah, are you to the point, or maybe is it in your roadmap if you're not, to where you could use Right, so could you tear down the platform and then have it redeploy your services, or is that not part of where you see this going?
Now, Spinnaker can deploy Spinnaker. That's kind of what you're asking,
like,
or?
Like if you take the actual pivotal foundation down and you want to rebuild it out, so is that something you would redeploy the apps through, or no?
No, but for cloud platforms, Terraform is a big piece of what we're doing. So Terraform allows, and there is a capability within Spinnaker to orchestrate Terraform. And all our cloud resources we build with Terraform. So we're able to do more about what you're saying is deploy the infrastructure, then deploy the application on these infrastructure. And we call that in some ways repaving the entire infrastructure stack all the way into the application. So Terraform is required to do that if you're using Terraform to do the infrastructure. It's a good integration, Terraform with Spinnaker.
So Spinnaker. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, Olga.
Spinnaker is primarily for working with microservices. That's what it's for. It's not for platform management or infrastructure management. You can also do Terraform, but it's probably not Spinnaker, not the best tool. Concourse would be better for you to do Terraform with.
And these are great topics to discuss when I talk about bouncing ideas off of vendors, right? And I love the community that we have here. I think we have, is it 4 more minutes? And then we will be available, both Olga and I, after the presentation. I think we got 3-4 more minutes. I'll take a question up front.
Okay, so efficiency perspective, I have seen many customers blocking Apps Manager portal or Spinnaker portal, not touching anything from the developers or something like that. So my idea is, what about just opening for develop environment only, so that developer can freely access, but not production environment?
Yeah.
So is there any reason for blocking all the promotion pipeline from developers?
Yeah, it's a great question. So why do we block, and we haven't opened up Spinnaker? A great suggestion, why don't you open it up for dev only, right? We're almost scared to give our developers a flavor of it, right? Then that's going to press the roadmap. My product owner's in the front row. But no, it's a great suggestion. And we thought about doing exactly that. We do want to be careful when we roll that out because we want to come really quick after that. We give that flavor, but I think it's a great suggestion, right? Give the DevOps teams and developers a chance to get into the tool and only use it for dev. But then how do we lock that down in terms of account management and some other things? You know, we have to be able to constrain the product or manage the product, its RBAC capability, and also what endpoints it's going to deploy to. So, but we could set up a Spinnaker instance for dev only. Yeah. Any other questions?
So from conception to first usage, how long did it take you?
We rolled out in November of 2018 after getting our first sniff of Spinnaker, probably in maybe June of 2017. So it probably was a good 1.5 years before we were able to take Spinnaker and use it for deployments. One more question?
Sure. I was more curious about, like before and after, operation-wise. You mentioned that managing Spinnaker could be very painful. How the game team is feeling about that around now? Something that I heard also was you need to have the right culture to make this change. If you can give me some kind of in-depth, what happened there? What was the conversation about? You want to introduce this new tool, and how that went?
It takes time. When we first introduced it, we didn't make friends, right? So when we first felt that Spinnaker may meet some of those requirements, it wasn't a great conversation because Jenkins can do quite a bit. It's a Swiss Army knife, right? But it really didn't meet at the high level of quality some of the key pieces that we wanted to deliver with our continuous delivery platform, but that doesn't come across well. So no, we'll just do this with AIM or we'll do this with Jenkins. But I think it does take time because when you say Spinnaker the first time to someone that's doing Jenkins and doing it well for a firm as large as ours, it's like, what's this Spinnaker toy? I've invested so much and we could do so much with this platform. So it really was timing. It took time to actually work together and come to that point where, we started feeling comfortable. Plus we had to earn our stripes. Spinnaker had to start doing something. And so it was a combination of, delivery on our side and then also building trust and education for us and also for those that own Jules and AIM. So with that, we need to conclude because I do think we're getting close to being over. But we're available. We'd love to hear from you. Love to answer any questions that you have. Thank you very much for being our audience today. Appreciate it.